The next question for us is the idea of like, do it for me. So we see this happening more and more in software technology. I recently spoke to the Intuit guys who are very much into this, who basically tell you, well, the ideal world is when you open TurboTax at the end of the, well, at the beginning of the year to do your tax filing, you just press a button and it basically tells you, hey, here's a couple of things I have questions about, but the rest I figured out for you. And I think the browser can do a lot. So the browser, as the central piece of technology which you take with you every single day, sees every single online interactions you have. So the browser should be able to basically help you and guide you, right? So one of the things I find still tremendously frustrating is I go to let's say Google, and I search for something, and I search for a car, and the browser has seen that I only look at Mitsubishi cars. I get search results from BMW. I don't care about BMW. The browser should be able to basically guide me and say, hey, you only looked at Mitsubishi cars the last 14 days. Do you want me to help you construct a search term which weeds out all the BMWs? There's a whole bunch of things the browser can do for me, like data entry, for example. Like, it still kills me that I go to a form and I need to sign up for a user account and a password. I mean, the browser should do that for me, and please keep the password secure on the browser, right? So there's a whole bunch of these things. And then lastly, and this is related, the question of the data economy. So we want to put people also back into control of their own data, but also help them do something meaningful with their data. So again, as the browser sees every single online interaction you have, the browser can give you pretty interesting insights into your usage pattern, but also allow you to, on your own terms, share this data with other people. So there's interesting stuff around, say, you found a website through a specific way through the internet, and you could share this piece of information with other people. Or stuff like, you are on a website, and 20 of your friends have been on that website as well and have done interactions. We could surface this information and basically tell you, hey, this is a website which a lot of your friends also visit. Or even simpler, you come to a website where you get the 404 message, so the website is gone. The browser could basically go out and in a swarm movement and say, hey, 15,000 other people also have this problem, so very most likely the website is really down, and it's not your internet provider who's blocking the website, for example. So there's a whole bunch of like little pieces and things you can do. And with that, I leave it there. If you're interested in being in touch, you get me at pfinette@mozilla.com or on Twitter @pfinette. And I would love to, help you. If you have any questions ever about like how to build communities and run communities, I'm super happy to help as much as we can, obviously, given the fact that we are very unique and everything we do comes with this like big sticker, like your mileage may vary. Thanks.
Thanks. That was in many ways really exhilarating, but maybe it's as a function of my age. What I really worry about is privacy and the abuse of information. Mm-hmm. And how do you balance those, and where do you see the biggest potential lesions coming? And this, I think, is part of the management of the kind of open innovation and the kind of community that you're talking about. And I'm not talking about how to be paranoid about it, but how to be sort of appropriately watchful and judicious about building in the controls.
Right. Yeah, privacy is something which is very close to our hearts and very core to what we do. First of all, like the interesting thing about Mozilla, well, the Firefox web browser, I should say, is the Firefox web browser is the only browser which we call it reports only to you. So we don't have a commercial interest in your data. So we truly have the user's interest at heart. In terms of privacy, I think we're currently pushing the boundaries quite a bit in terms of like trying to get we see this as kind of like as a pendulum, and it's swinging a little bit too far to the the lax side, where people are often not aware what happens with their data, or even if they are aware, there's basically no alternatives for them. We see this, very prominently happened with Facebook. Google is kind of like on the brink of it, like especially in Europe about their Street View service. So we try to have a voice in these things. We try to build in controls into the browser, which basically give you these controls back. At the same time, we work with a lot of these companies like Google and Facebook to basically create mechanisms which give a little bit more control back to the user. It's a tough topic, because at the same time, sometimes you find yourself in at least we at Mozilla, we find ourselves in a situation where you're a little bit like the parent, where you basically go to your child and you're like, no, you can't do this, right? Though the child wants to do it. And it's kind of like you come to this position where you're like, so where does our responsibility end? And how far should we bring things? Like, should we protect the user against his will, basically? So it's a fine balance. It's something we are trying to figure out. There's a lot of debate currently going on at Mozilla about how do we do this properly and appropriately. It's not easy. So the question was, is it too late? I don't think it's too late. I think so there's an interesting notion which I recently read. So I lived in the UK for a little while, and I recently read about UK politics. So I don't know how familiar you are with like their CCTV craziness. So I lived in London, which is the city with the highest density of CCTV camera, which really bugged me. And the notion is that once you have pushed the boundaries, even if you take the boundaries back, you will never take them back to like where they were originally. You'd only take them back a little bit. And this, in this particular incident, was about the governmental reaction. So what you currently see, I think, with a couple of larger internet companies, they're I believe they're purposely pushing the boundaries as far as they can, then take it back a little bit, because this gives them more leeway than if they would have done it, like in a more subtle way. It certainly doesn't help if you have someone like Eric Schmidt from Google on national television basically tell you that if you don't like Street View, you can move. Or if you don't want to have anything on the internet to be appeared, don't do it in the first place. I mean, all these comments are just like, I don't want to be their PR department besides. But so is it too late? It's a good question. I don't think so, but I also think society starts to change. So one of the interesting comments I read, I think in the Wall Street Journal, was about how today kids don't get jobs because they have inappropriate pictures on their Facebook profiles, of them, being young and puking, half naked and puking. That problem will solve itself in like 5 to 10 years, because the people who hire them will have the same pictures, right? So I think society is changing in an interesting way. I'm not sure if it's a good way, but I think society is changing, yeah.
Hi, Rolf Müller. I have a question, because for someone who builds more traditional-based companies, where you always try to control the chaos, you embrace the chaos.
Yes.
So it's a very different way of thinking, so that's very interesting for me to hear that. But the question is, how do you actually manage this? So which kind of people do you hire who actually have the ability to go through this millions of internet sites, blogs, email information? Do you read these, or do you have programs to actually go with search words through this overflow of information? That's my first question. Second one is, for a company that sounds an incredible business model, where you only have to pay 350 people in order to do an incredible probably revenue, or build a company which creates the value. And the third one, if you are an unemployed programmer, is it something which you're actually driving unemployment, or you don't provide actually employment and revenue to the people who have the skills? So that's the other part. I'm always very very proud of seeing people, you know, the parking lot is filling up, people I pay health insurance, and I have people who can pay their, you know, their food and mortgages. Mm-hmm. So in a way, it's a very different business model, and there's a lot of questions, perhaps that's more for afterwards, but could you comment on some of those points?
Yeah, sure. It's a good, they're all good questions. So let me try to unpack the questions. So first question was about how do we actually manage the, especially information overflow, right? So information overflow is a real problem for us. The way you manage this in practical terms is that you tend to zone in on specific areas you're interested in or you're working in. So I certainly don't read, you know, anything which is going on. There's a whole bunch of stuff which I simply tune out of. The way I do this is like, we use very simple techniques, so Soyuz again, right? So one of the things we do is I personally read a lot of my news through filters in Google News. So I let Google crawl the web for me, and I filter for specific things, so that makes it, you know, digestible. I follow a certain amount of people on Twitter because I know that these people are the people who say things which are important to me. I read a specific amount of blogs, and I'm continuously like weeding them out. It's not an easy problem to solve. Especially if you're new to the organization, we find it like you drown. Like a lot of my employees, when they, you know, like their first 3 months or something, they drown in information because they really try to get everything in, and then they go through this motion of like, oh, I try to do everything like the fire hose, and then they basically stop anything. And then they realize, that's probably also not working. And then they slowly start tuning the dials in back to, you know, what is the relevant information for us. And this only works if you trust the people in your nodes. So I need to trust the people like who do Firefox core development, that they do the right job, and that they also like kind of like do the right job in the areas I'm more interested in, because I can't possibly keep up with them. So I see these people like every 2 weeks for lunch, and then try to give them my ideas, and then just let them run with it. Your second question was savings for the company. Yes. And this ties a little bit into your third question, I guess, right? Which is the question of like, so how does this pan out on a macroeconomic viewpoint? So in some ways, you could say that if we would be a commercial entity, we would derive value from people working for free. As we provide a public service, and this is how we see ourselves, I think the problem space is different. We give away Firefox for free. You don't pay for it at all. And the revenue we make with Firefox is purely for sustainability reasons. So it's not like we're making $500 million. It's public. We're making about $65-70 million a year, and pay our staff with that, as well as contribute back to the communities. So I think the problem space is slightly different. But yes, there are macroeconomic tendencies. At the same time, I would say we provide an interesting, on the flip side of that, we provide an interesting value to society also when you look at, say, your unemployed programmer who works on our project, gains valuable skills, we give him training, he gains social recognition, which often makes his employability chances better. So we see this quite a bit, like where people like come into our project, work for like a year or so in the project, then get hired somewhere and do tremendous jobs. So it comes from both sides, I guess. Yeah.
This one's not live. I hate to stop, but we've gone for 2 hours and 10 minutes, and we're exactly on time. So let me suggest that we go ahead and take our 20-minute break, and please come back at 10:30 for the panel. And Pascal, there's the networking lunch and lots of time during the day. So Pascal, thank you very much.
Thank you.